start recording this. We're going to finish up the blueprint talk a little bit this morning. There's not much more to go over. There's a lot more to go over, but there's not much more that we're going to go over in class. Blueprints are a big concept, but there's a couple more things that I wanted to cover that we just ran out of time last week. And then we're going to start talking about the final project. Dun, dun, dun. It's a little over a month and a half out, so quite a bit of time. But we're going to talk about that in detail. So blueprints, and we're start talking about the final project and talk about those requirements, look at some inspirational projects, and talk about how the rest of the semester looks as far as assignments go. When it comes to regular assignments that we've been doing, you had the inspirational projects, you had the midterm from last week, you had the avatars. I think there was another one in there, the virtual worlds. Those week-to-week projects are kind of done now. Congratulations, we've reached that milestone. But going forward, we have two much bigger milestones. We have the final project itself, and then we also have this week 11 final project proposals. So it's 2 weeks from now. We'll go over all of this in detail in a little bit, but I just want to show you the calendar here. So that's kind of our next big milestone is in 2 weeks, where you will formally present with whoever is in your group what it is that you hope to achieve and do for your final project. And like I said, we will go into all of that in probably the second half of class. We'll see how fast the blueprints go. Okay. So this week, finish up blueprints, start talking about the final project, look at a lot of inspirational projects, talk about what's required for the final project, and hopefully have a little bit of time for some socializing and group making at the end of class. And then next week, we will continue talking about best practices for working on a big project in Unreal, and we'll also have a little demo on facial mocap, and I'll show you how to do that. So that's something that we haven't done yet. And then really it's all downhill towards the final project at that point. So we're at the top right now. We're starting to go downhill towards the end of the semester and the final project. Hold your questions on the final project until I start to talk about that again. I will probably answer all of those questions. Okay? Any general questions outside of final project or blueprints or anything like that before we get started? All right. We are recording. So last week we looked at blueprints and we talked about how they are the programming framework in Unreal. They are the visual programming framework in Unreal that sits on top of the underlying code of Unreal Engine, which is C++. So I made a few demos in blueprints last week. We made a flickering light on a timeline in code. We made a triggerable spotlight here whenever my character, in this case the character, in reality it could be anything, whatever, when specific objects enter specific area, do this action. In this case, it's my third person character entering this little square of area right here. If I go outside of it, boop, a very tiny area. If my character enters or exits that area, do something. In this case, turn on this invisible light. Not the sun, but turn on this invisible light. The last thing that we looked at was printing data to the screen, which is what all that blue lettering is over there. If I zoom in on that, you see I'm getting my character's position as it moves throughout the world, X, Y, and Z position. Again, this doesn't just have to be your character. This could be any object in Unreal. I don't know, you have a character that shoots or throws giant basketballs or something. And as those basketballs fly around the world and bounce around the world, we're tracking the position of that for some reason. So the code for those things just to refresh your memory, the spotlight here, the blinky blinky spotlight. I have an actor in my level called Spotlight. It's not a very descriptive name. If I had a bunch of spotlights, I probably would want to name them sequentially or in a digestible way. That is running into a timeline in the level blueprint editor. The timeline in the level blueprint editor is a keyframe nonlinear timeline that you can put keyframes in to control values. Here we have the light intensity, and that is just fading in and out on a timeline, which is feeding into a node called set intensity on the light, which sets the intensity on the light. If I click into the timeline itself, see I made 3 keyframes here. We're going from 0 value in that keyframe to, what is this? Looks like 100, and then ramping back down to 0 over the course of 2.5 seconds, which is the length of this timeline. The other things here, we hit the H key on the keyboard. No specific reason for the H key other than it's just the key that I picked. Hit the H key, and I printed to the screen hitting the H key. In reality, we could have any key on our keyboard do anything in Unreal. Spawn a fireball, kill a character, change the time of day, turn on the light. This print string is just a placeholder for whatever it is that you could imagine, or whatever string of events that you could imagine. It's not just has to be one thing. It could be a bunch of things. Player walks up to the door with the key card. They put the key card in the door. The button depresses on the door, does this unlocking animation. The door begins to open. The lights turn on in the room. The monsters start to roar. The fire turns on. The scary music turns on. You can do all of these things just by linking logical events together.
What's the development only tag?
Oh, good question. Print string is just for development, so it won't appear like if you were making a game, if you package the game, that wouldn't pop up on the player's screen at home. It's solely for debugging and for programming, and just for making sure your stuff works. Like I would want to, for instance, with the trigger box down here, I could plug in a print string to when on actor begin overlap, and I could say, player is in the box. And then on end overlap, I could hook up a print string there and say player's out of the box and get rid of all this other code. And that would allow me to at least see fundamentally if my trigger boxes are working, instead of asking myself, is it the trigger boxes that aren't working, or is it all this other code that I have happening? It's just for debugging purposes. And also if you had like variables and stuff that had dynamic values, they would feed back the value in real time to the screen so you could see what the actual value was. Because otherwise you would see the result of that value, but you wouldn't see like the raw number, the raw nerdy number, which is useful when doing programmatic things. So we looked at all that stuff, and we were doing all of these things in the level blueprint in Unreal Engine. So remember, the level blueprint can be had from up here in this little graph icon. You click the drop down, it says open level blueprint. There's one level blueprint per level in Unreal. Makes sense, right? Level blueprints are intimately tied to the level itself. So whatever objects that you have in that level, you can reference in the level blueprint. What do I mean by reference? For instance, there's something called Spotlight here that I'm using to run this timeline to set the intensity of the light. If I go back to my world, if I clicked on this Spotlight, oops, I lost my cursor. Lost my cursor for a second. I can't see it in the level right now. Oh, there we go. Okay. There's like a graphical glitch going on. I have to guess. Okay, anyways. There's something in my world, my level, called Spotlight that I can then reference in the level blueprint, which I am here. The downside of using the level blueprint, which is great. Level blueprints are fantastic. The downside about using level blueprints is that it's not modular. If I wanted to take this code for this spotlight and put it into another level, or if I wanted to duplicate this spotlight 100 times in my world, and I wanted it to have the same code with trigger boxes, the same timeline that controls the intensity, all that sort of stuff, I would have to reproduce that all in the level blueprint, which could get quite messy. And also, every time I create a new spotlight in the world, like I'm duplicating the code right now, but it's using the same reference. So now I'm going to have to go in, go to my world, get the duplicated spotlight, change the name in the level blueprint. It's not very modular, right? So it doesn't scale up very well, as the kids like to say. So when it comes to something like that, this is something we didn't get to last week. We can create what's called a class blueprint. So let's go ahead and do that. So in my content browser, again, there's half a dozen different ways to do the same thing in Unreal, but in the content browser, I'm going to create a new blueprint class. So add blueprint class. Actor, this is an actor. This is an object that can be placed or spawned in my world, an actor. And it's going to ask for a name. I'm going to call it BP_lamp because it's going to be a lamp. Double click it to open it up. And we get a window that you've probably seen before if you've clicked around in different assets that you've used. So this is an empty blueprint class window. It has a place to put different components. What are components? They're pieces of your asset. Static meshes, skeletal meshes, particle effects, sound effects, trigger boxes, all of those things can be components, pieces of a blueprint actor. So I'm going to start to construct my blueprint actor here. So I'm going to click the add button up top here in the top left. And in this very specific example, I'm just creating a light, and I'm going to put a point light on it and a trigger box. In reality, this could be anything you could dream of. So I'm going to go down here and pick static mesh. And what static mesh do I want it to be? I got to go over to the details panel and tell it that I'm looking for static mesh that is a light. No, I'm not going to use the chair. You're going to spoil my whole thing. I'm on a roll. So it just so happens in the starter content that there is a lamp in here. It's almost like I planned this. And when I fill in that blank spot for the static mesh, I have a lamp here now, right? If I compile and save this, and I go back to my level in my content browser, look at that. There's the blueprint, and now there's a beautiful lamp there. If I drag this into my world, look at that. The lamp is through the floor. The lamp is through the floor because it's through the floor in the blueprint class, right? So exactly what you would expect to happen. If I raised it up in the blueprint class, it raised up in the world, right?
I'm pretty sure it's upside down too.
It's a hanging lamp. It actually is a hanging lamp. I suppose.
Pretty long hanging.
Yeah, it could. I suppose it could be turned into a floor lamp. Now, what if I had a bunch of these things, right? And, you know, I didn't want to. Say you have a bunch of these lamps in your world, right? And you're like, you know, I actually do want to make it a floor lamp instead of a hanging lamp. So instead of going into your world and changing all 3 of these or 300 of these, you just change it in the parent, the blueprint class itself. And look at that. All the changes happen together because they're all parented to the same class in Unreal. Now, this is kind of a silly example. You know, there's only 3. It's not that big of a deal to move the 3 of them. But I think you can understand, like, if you have a lot of these, not only are you moving the lamp, but you're changing the value of the light that it's emitting. You're changing the color. You're changing the size of the trigger box. That could save you a ton of time. by using this sort of parent-child relationship in Blueprint classes. Let me put a side-by-side here and continue. We'll keep them hanging lamps, just to spite you. Let me run around and make sure this is a good height. Maybe a little bit higher. That's a little low. Let's raise it up a little bit more. All right, now in my Blueprint class here for my lamp, I'm going to add a light. A light is another component. If I type in lights into the search bar, I will get all the different types of lights that I can use as components in Unreal Engine. What sort of light should we use? Spotlight, I guess? Probably a point light makes more sense. Point light. So now in my viewport here, I have the point light. I can then drag it up to my light, which makes sense because that's where the light bulb is. I'm going to maybe increase the intensity a little bit, just so it's a little more visible. Maybe change the radius down a little bit so it's not so big. And crank the intensity a little bit more, actually. All right, compile and save. We haven't added any code to this yet at all. So it's really just a organizational bonus right now, right? If I move my light, everything comes along with it. And also, if you look in the details panel for the asset specifically, you can modify the Blueprint class here, which will make it unique in its own right. So if I wanted to, change the color of the point light in this one to, I don't know, red, it's not changing it in any of the others. I'm not changing the parent, I'm modifying the child in this case. So I can still leverage the power of the Blueprint class by using its parent-child relationship, but I can also still add a little bit of individuality to them as well. If I went back to the Blueprint class, and I changed the intensity to, 0. Now I've turned the intensity off for all of them, but still I maintain that the one is red and the other ones are white. So kind of a simple example to show the power of this. I want to start to get into the code next here. Very simple code like we've already done. But just showing it differently now using Blueprint classes.
Just a question.
Sure.
Is the point light going to take consideration of the shape of the lamp? Like, say, if you put it inside the shed,
Yes.
is like the light going to be blocked by the shed instead of like just connecting through the lamp?
I mean, that's a good question. Lighting in Unreal works. It casts world accurate shadows. So if there is an actor in between the light bulb and the hood of the lamp, or the shade of the lamp, I guess. Shade, probably right. The shade of the lamp, the light can't get through to whatever's over here. It's like an actual light, right? Like the light, it's just casting down. It's not casting. If we opened up this drop ceiling, it's not going to be on the other side because it's blocked. Well, that's not a Blueprint thing. That's just an Unreal light thing. I mean, I'm not sure that you could. Yeah, I mean, you would have to hack the entire lighting system to change that. Because the point, people usually think that they want to recreate realistic lighting, and here you are wanting to change that. I guess that's why it's called Unreal, right?
Yeah.
It's not called real.
Exactly.
But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, lights are blocked by objects in Unreal. And I think you could come up with a way that you could have light transmiss through an actor, but that's taking us down a different road right now. All right, where was I? So let's start to trigger this thing now. Okay, let me spread these out a little bit more. Yeah, this is really annoying that I can't see my cursor in the window right now. But I'm gonna make do. And I'm just going to create a line of lights, and I'm going to set up trigger boxes, and I'm going to run through them to turn them on. Very simple. So just like we've done before, we created trigger boxes in the world and controlled them with level blueprints. Now I'm creating a trigger box as a component in my blueprint actor that is specifically attached to the light itself. So I'm going to go to the components window again, add, and collision is what it's called. Yeah. So there's different types of collision shapes. They're primitive shapes. It's a box, which is just a cube. There's capsules, which is like a little pill shape. Spheres, it's obviously a sphere. You could have custom collision shapes if you would need to. You could use the object as itself, the mesh itself as collision if you would want to too. Just doing that is a little bit more intense on the computer because it's not a simple shape like a box. It's a simple shape. So a box satisfies our needs for right now. So I'm going to pick box collision. As soon as I do that, I get a little box here. I'm going to drag that down to the floor. I can size it up if I want to. I can move it around. If it would make sense to offset it, I could offset it. I'm just going to scale it up a little bit so I'm not hunting around for it. I think that's fine. It's absolutely fine for now. So if I went back to my map, now I see all of those have collision boxes on them. So as I run through them, I'm going to trigger this code that I'm going to make. So when you're in a blueprint class, in order to start to do the code, you need to go to the event graph, just like the event graph in level blueprints. So I click the event graph, and I see a window that pretty much looks like the level blueprint window. For example, here's the level blueprint window. It even says level blueprint in the bottom. Here it just says blueprint, class blueprint. So any code that I put in here is specifically just going to affect the things, the components that are listed here. What can I affect here? The box collision, the point light, the light mesh itself. If I had sound effects, I could affect those here. If I had particle effects, I could affect those here too. You know, I could put tons and tons of things in here, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more simple. So I'm going to select on my box, just like we did last time with the level blueprint, and I'm going to right click. I'm going to add event, collision. Here's those things that we looked at last week. On event begin actor overlap. In this case, it's on component begin overlap because the trigger box is a component, not an actor. Add event, collision, begin. I'm just going to add a begin one, and I'm going to add an end one as well. Oops. You got to make sure that you're selected on the thing that you're trying to create an event for. So if you ever, you can't find the event, it's because 1, you don't have it clicked on. 2, you have this little checkbox context sensitive clicked here. I like to keep the context sensitive clicked on because it narrows things down a little bit. All right. What do I want it to affect? I want it to affect my point light. Drag my point light in there. Where did I drag it from? I just dragged it from the components window. You could create a blueprint class with multiple point lights in it. Multiple static meshes in it if you wanted to. All right, and I'm just going to set intensity. This is the same node that we used last week. So on component begin overlap, it's going to set the intensity to, I don't know, 20,000. And then I'm just going to copy paste, set intensity on event end overlap, and set that back to 0. Zoom in on that. All right. And this code here is going to take effect for all 3 of these lights, which makes sense, right? Because they're all parents of that blueprint class. Well, let's try it out. First thing I want to do, though, is I need to change the default light value to 0 because I want them to start off, right? You don't have to have them start off, but in this case, I want them to start off. So as I run into them, it should turn on. Boop, 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 boop. Really need sound effects. Boop, boop, boop. Makes sense, right? And I could keep duplicating these out if I wanted to. Have thousands of them. But the point of this is just to show you that you can create prepackaged little modules that are called blueprint classes that you can put a bunch of things into that are called components, and you can add code to that you can have as a complete little package. You could take these little packages and you could share them to other levels. You could share them to other projects. You could share them with your mother, whatever you want to do. Question?
Like, what would be the difference when you want to build a blueprint, like, you know, on the level editor, or like make an individual, like, separate blueprint for like maybe something like the MIDI? If your MIDI would be.
I'm gonna probably shoot myself in the foot here for everything I just told you, but everything that you want to do in the level, you can do in the level blueprint. It's just that it kind of becomes a little messy, right? I was going to use a really bad analogy. I'm not going to use that. It's going to confuse you. You could do everything in the level blueprint, but you give up the ability to have things modular. So you have to repeat everything. I think you stepped out when I was talking about this, but like, for instance, I'm in the level blueprint now. Say I wanted to duplicate this pink spotlight here, right? And the code attached to it that is just flickering it on and off, on and off. I could duplicate this code and just copy and paste it, and copy and paste it. And then, you know, I'd want to go into my map and copy the light and duplicate it as many times as I needed. But then my references are wrong here, right? Like, this is still referencing the same spotlight that I originally duplicated it from. So then I have to go in and change the references. It just becomes a little tedious because it's not packaged in a modular way. And as someone that is not super well versed in programming, like, I can do things, but usually I just brute force it and it's kind of messy, right? So I know all about using the level blueprint to just do everything, but working with some more savvy programming people in Unreal, they always get angry at me. And if you're working on a larger scale project that has interactivity, that you want to be scalable, you know, for tons of users, and also understandable by other people in your team, it's really beneficial to have things parsed out into the little modules, the blueprint classes. You know, for instance, like, if we were working on the same project together, and I put everything in you put everything in the level blueprint because you don't know better. I know better. I was gonna say I put everything in there, and you know, I want to work on pink. This is a very basic example. I want to work on pink spotlights, but you want to work on the hanging lamps, right? We can't work on that at the same time, because that means you need to check out the level blueprint by checking out the level at the same time. If these were parsed out into blueprint classes, I could check out that specific actor, and you could check out the other blueprint actor, which, you know, doesn't exist right now, but suppose it did, and we could work on them separately, so we wouldn't step on top of each other. So it's not just an organizational standpoint, it's not just a scalability standpoint, but it's also like a team member version control useful thing too. And again, going back to the thing, you know, just being someone that is, you know, less savvy coding but can do things, but tends to brute force things and not have things be pretty with code. That's something I've learned just working with larger teams. It's harder to brute force things when it's not just you, because you have to talk to other people, which is unfortunate, but
Oh wow, how did I make this work?
right? The version control thing is a huge deal, though. We'll get to that. I don't know. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do something else. We're gonna take this blueprint class that we created, and I'm gonna drop back to the level blueprint actually, because I'm not a hater. I'm gonna create something in my level called a target point. A target point it's basically a null actor, and it's an invisible actor that you can use as a reference point in your world. I'm going to use this target point, and I'm going to drop this up in the sky, because what I'm going to create here is I'm going to just spawn a bunch of these lovely lamps. I just have them spawn out of the sky when I hit the H key on my keyboard. Okay, so I created that reference to that target point. Now I am going to go into my level blueprint. Let's find some new room here. I think I was using the H key already, so maybe I'll use the G key. G key, not get key, but the actual G key right there. So when I press the G key, I want to, again, how do you know what these things are called? Experience. I'm going to use a node called spawn actor from class, which kind of makes sense, the name, if you think about it. I'm going to spawn an actor from a blueprint class. What class? Well, it's good that I just created a blueprint that has the lamp in it. It's almost like I planned this.
At this point, if you didn't plan this, I don't think you can proceed any longer though.
To be a teacher, you only need to plan 1 week ahead. Stay 1 week ahead of your students, although you can get in trouble. What do I want to do now? Oh, I want to grab the target point. So I'm going to go into my world in the outliner, click the target point, go back here, right click, create a reference to target points. You can create a reference to any actor. This is what we did to get a reference to the spotlight and the point light that we already did last week. So I'm going to right click and get a reference. You can only get the reference if you're clicked on it in your world. So if you're not seeing create a reference to so-and-so, it's because you're not clicked on it. So here's a reference. And I want to get the location of this target point in the sky. So get actor transform, which gives me the XYZ value of that. And I'm going to plug, here's where the color coding in Unreal comes in handy. I'm going to plug the orange into the orange. And what this orange is it's the vector value, XYZ value in space. So when I push G, I'm going to spawn the lamp. Where am I going to spawn it at? I'm going to spawn it in the sky where this target point is located. So the code goes out, it spawns the lamp. Where's it spawns it? It's got to get the actor transform of the target point, and that's where it spawns it at. And all that happens instantaneously. So let's try it. Play. Oh, it is happening. It's just they're not falling because I didn't turn on physics yet. You see them? It looks like the sun in the sky, but it's actually just a bunch of lamps on top of each other. Okay. I need to go into my, well, this is going to screw up my other lamps, but that's okay. I need to go into my blueprint class, and I need to turn physics on for that asset, for the static mesh of the light itself. So I click on the light, and I'm going to scroll over in the side, and I'm going to find the physics window, simulate physics. Check that box. Check. So now, as soon as I click play, all the other lights are just going to fall. Oop. But you know, I could click on them individually then. Why is that unloaded? That's weird. I should be able to click the G now and just have lights. Lights. Let's see how quickly I can crash Unreal Engine.
I think Unreal's stronger than that. I mean, your PC's stronger than that.
That's right. Although I bet my my frame rate has dropped.
With all the slides,
Stat FPS. Oh, still pushing 60, 68 frames per second. When I kick them around, it drops down to 50. Oh, let's keep spawning them. Oh, we're down in the 40s. We're in the 30s. So this is my game. It's called Kicking Lamps Around. Oh wow, this is getting a little messy now. So, inspirational idea for a final project. Just kick the lamps around in motion capture. Did anybody ever play the Wii game Elebits? No? You guys played the Nintendo Wii? It's a really cute game where there's these, just made me think about this for some reason. This is really cute game where you just go around and you kind of vacuum up these little electric creatures that are hiding throughout the world. What is the world? It's like houses and stuff. So you're ripping open cabinet doors. Basically, your Wii controller is like, think of it like Spider-Man's web, I guess. So you're like shooting and then ripping the drawers open and finding all of these little electric creatures. It's really cute, but it kind of reminded me of this. Very
why are like those light flickers?
They're flickering because I'm bumping into them.
Oh, so that's your character blocking the lights completely?
Yeah, I see the glitch though.
Yeah, I mean like that.
It's not the shadow glitches make sense because I'm moving the light, but it does turn off for a second. That's weird. I think so.
Wait, what?
That makes sense because there is a trigger box attached to it still. There's. If I could turn off game mode now, I would see, 200 trigger boxes scattered around the world too. That's right. Because the light had a trigger box, and the trigger box I was telling is to turn on and turn off. Totally right. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that must be why. Because if I go in and I just let's just drop one. Well, I gotta kick it over. But the trigger box, it's not on right now, but the trigger box is right there. Invisible trigger box.
Makes so much sense. Makes so much sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I was gonna just dodge the question because I didn't know the answer. Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what it is. Oh, look, there's your shadow right there from the shade of the lamp.
Oh.
Look at that. It's almost like it's real. All right. Let's ramp up the difficulty here. I didn't want this to take all the first part of class. So we created a blueprint class. We spawned objects with physics. The very basic example of physics there. You can drop anything in your world. Now let's kind of get make like a pseudo game here. So I'm going to drag a cylinder into my world, and I want to create a blueprint class out of this. I'm going to right click, blueprint class. We're going to call this BP coin, BP underscore coin. And this is going to be a little coin that I run around and pick up. Okay, so I'm not going to put a texture on it or anything like that. We'll just keep it simple right now. You totally could put a texture on it. You could totally put material on it, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Minus 90, minus 90. Let's Doesn't really look like a coin yet. Let's shrink it down. It's a fat coin, but that's a coin. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to go and drag a couple of these into my world. Well, that is a big coin. And this graphical glitch is really annoying. There we go. I'm going to shrink the coin down a little bit still. Drag it out. Drag it out. A couple of them. I don't know. Let's put... Let's put 5 of them. Okay. And I'm going to go back into the blueprint class and shrink it down a little bit. 0.75. Save. Go back. Still cutting through the floor a little bit. Shrink it down a little bit more. 0.7. Good enough. How does that feel when I walk into it? Let's raise them up in the air a little bit. No, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I can't run through it because it has collision right now. So, you know, if this was a Super Mario or whatever, I would just be able to transit right through the coin because it wouldn't have collision on it. We'll be able to do all of that stuff in a second. So I'm going to go in first, and I will click on the cylinder and look over in the details panel. And if I go to the collision section here, I can change the collision. The preset that is currently set is named Block All Dynamic. What is dynamic? Well, my character is dynamic. They can move. They're user controllable, so that's dynamic. If I change this collision preset from Block All Dynamic to, there's a lot of different options here. I'm just going to set it to no collision. I should be able to transit right through it. Boop, 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 boop. They don't disappear yet or anything. They're not spinning. They're not even yellow. They don't make a cute little sound. Not yet. But we're getting to all that. So I need to create a box collision like I did before. So box, collision. Where do I want to position it?
Not the cylinder collision.
I mean, box collision is cheaper graphically.
But you're making a coin. How can you make a coin cheap?
I see what you did there. And you could have anything be the collision if you really wanted to. So now you see all of these guys have collisions on them. Great. So I'm going to save this. And what do we want to do? Let's, why don't we have them spin first?
Oh.
So I'm going to go into the event graph of the blueprint class for the coin.
Is the graph there when you pull it up?
Yeah, by default. If you close it down by accident, because these are just tabs, you can go and double click over here and it should open back up. Boop. So I'm going to use this node called event tick to rotate my coins. So the node I'm going to use here is called add actor local rotation. I'm going to add rotation. And I want to... Event tick is a node that fires off a impulse every frame. It's quite expensive to use if you're like making a real game, but you can get away with using it for projects that you're not really worried about performance. So I'm going to create a variable here. The first time we're creating a variable. Down in the section here, I'm going to create a variable a float variable. When you create a variable, it asks you what you want to name it, and it asks you what type you want it to be. And then you get to pick from a big long list. This is going to be a float variable, a decimal value for rotation. And I'm just going to call this, I'm going to rotate around Z. So I'm going to call it it's the yaw. So a yaw per second. The name doesn't really matter. You're creating the variable, so you're creating the name. And when I drag that in, when you drag a variable in, it's going to ask you, do you want to set that value or do you want to get that value? In this case, I want to get that value. I'm not setting the value. I'm going to get that value, and I'm going to multiply it. And so I'm going to put the asterisk in here to get the multiply options. I'm going to multiply it. So we're just doing math here. Multiply it by the number of seconds coming out of the tick. So drag this into here, drag this into here. And from there, we're going to use this node. This is a little bit less obvious node called makeRotator. Actually turns the actor into a rotatable object and supplies rotational values. Oh, if you hover over it, it actually tells you what it is. Makes a rotator from rotational values supplied in degrees. So I don't want it to do the roll. I want it to do the yaw. So I'm going to just drag that down. Uh-oh. Frozen. Don't forget to save, folks. Oh, don't forget to save. Drag that down to yaw instead.
No, I just save it after it defrosts.
Pro tip, remember you can, if you hold down Control and left click, you can drag the wire, you can drag an existing wire around to change its position. You can always delete it with Alt clicking on it, but then you got to re-drag it out, and especially if you're dragging it all the way across the long level blueprints, it can be easier just to hold down Control. So I'm going to plug the rotational value, return value into there. And what is the target? The target is this blueprint class itself. So when I click this and save, it should start to rotate, fingers crossed. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, no.
Can you talk about why you're getting the yaw second instead of setting the yaw second?
Say that again?
Why did you get it instead of set it?
Because I'm getting the existing yaw. Oh, I know why. Because I'm defining a value. I'm getting an existing value rather than setting. And the reason that they're not spinning is because the current value of my variable is 0 because I'm a dummy and I didn't change it. Essentially, in this case, this is speed. So I've told it the speed is 0. So if I change this to 1000 or something, now they should start to rotate quickly. So I think it's rotating 1,000 degrees in a second, which is what, 2.5 rotations approximately.
If you make it absurdly high, they just look like spheres.
Oh my goodness. Let's add a 0 to that and see what happens. Are you just trying to crash my computer? Add physics to it, you mean? I don't think Unreal has like flappy wing physics. That would be cool though.
That would be like swords.
But it would hit off of things. If you made the collision not a box, but if you made it the shape of the coin, then it could hit off things and go flying. Maybe if I spawned a lot of them. Let's slow that down a little bit because we don't want to send Mario into the meat blender.
Don't worry, it has no collision.
There we go. That's good. That's right. There's no collision. Next time you're crossing the street, don't worry. Car doesn't have collision. Just turn your collision off. You'll be safe.
Don't you just clip through the floor then?
You would drop through the earth. What are we doing? All right, so we created a spin. Cool, but we haven't been able to pick them up yet. So I want to do that next. So the step to pick them up is I need to create a variable. I need to create a variable that is going to store the number of coins that are currently have been picked up by the character. In this case, my third person character. This is a little convoluted with how Unreal does things without having easily accessible global variables. But in this case, to get this to work, I need to create the variable in my third person character. So here I'm going to create a variable, just an integer variable. I'm just going to call this coins. And this is going to be a variable that I'm referencing back in another blueprint. So I'm referencing the variable that is located in third person character in the blueprint called coin. So I'm going to get since I have the box collision here, I'm going to get a collision from this. Oops, not a reference. Click on my box collision, add an event, collision, add actor begin overlap. That sounds good. So when I collide with the box, what I eventually want to happen is we're just going to do a print string here. And I'm just going to say coin, hit the coin. Right, nothing different that we've done before. So now if I connect this and compiled it and I play it, you're going to see the little, I should disable the XYZ values coming out for my character. So that's a lot of stuff. Disabled. Now if I run into the coin, as soon as I run into it in the top right or top left, it's just going to say coin, which I don't know if you can see, but it does right there. So cool, I'm hitting something, it says coin. That's the very fundamental thing that we need to have happen, but it's not telling me how many coins I've picked up at this point, right? So we need to start to make this more of an elaborate thing. So to do that, I need to drag this baby out. I'm going to do what's called casting in Unreal. And casting means getting a reference to another blueprint. Why? Because I want to access that variable that is in my third person character. So I'm going to cast to third person character. How do I know that I'm looking for something called BP underscore third person character? It's because that's what it's called, right? And it could be any name. I could call it BP underscore robot, and that's what I'm looking for. But in this case, it's called BP underscore third person character. And now that I've referenced this, I can drag out from this blue dot here and get access to all the variables that are in that third person character. There's only one right now. Oh, I guess no, that's not. There's just one called coin. So if I drag out from this now and I type in coin, it's going to pop up as an existing variable. If I didn't create this variable in the third person character, I would see nothing here if I search for coin. So drag out from coin, and I'm going to get coin. I'm going to get the existing value of coin. And then I'm also going to set coin, because when I hit the trigger box, I want the code to get the existing value of the coin, but then we're going to do some addition that adds to and creates a new value for coin. It changes the variable valuable for coin. So I'm going to drag out from my get coin here. And I'm going to just type a plus to get an add node. And I'm going to plug this into coin. And how much do I want to add? Every time I hit the trigger box, we go out and we get coin. How much do we add to it? Right now, the default is 0, but I'm going to add 1, which makes sense. Every time I pick up a coin, we add 1, right? And that's going to set the coin variable to whatever that new number is, and then it's going to print that number to screen. Oh, get it to print to screen right now, it's just saying coin. In order to get it to print the value, I need to drag the value out. Now it's going to print to screen the value of coin. Fingers crossed. Error. Oh. It's just asking what is hitting the overlap box of the coin. I just need to drag object into other actor here. So my third person character is what's running into the collision box. Cool. Go back to my map. So now every time I hit coin, it should pop up a number and increment 1, 2, 3, 4. They disappear rather quickly, but it's incrementing. And I can keep running into them because I haven't made them disappear. Now I'm in the 20s. But I'm collecting numbers. I'm storing values at this point. So now I could use that information of stored values to do stuff with. Okay. Like what? Well, why don't we make this a little bit more interesting? We bring in that beautiful coin sound. So I'm going to say play sound 2D is the name of the node. What sound? I've pre-prepared and I've gotten a lovely coin sound. I need to turn the volume up for that. Pick that one. Great. So it's going to print the current value of the coin to screen, and then it's also going to play a sound. And you know what? Why don't we do one more thing? Why don't we destroy the actor and make it disappear? So it's just a node called destroy actor and play sound. Go back to the map. Ta-da. It's a Mario. And they're gone.
It's actually destroyed.
It's actually destroying the actor, which is a simple way to get rid of things, but in our case, it's not going to be very useful because what I want to do next is I want to have those coins respawn to be able to collect them again. Okay? So let's increase the difficulty. Okay? It's pretty simple when you think about it. I'm going to delete this destroy actor node because it's very destructive. It kills the actor. It kills the actor until I restart the level. Okay? So instead of destroying the actor, I'm just going to set its visibility and its collision. I'm just going to deactivate the collision and I'm going to hide it in game. So I'm going to use a node called set hidden in game cylinder. Set hidden in game. And also set collision. What was it? Set actor collision? Set actor collision. There's a lot of set actor enable collision. Yeah. And then there's just a Boolean value, true, false, for is the collision active or not. So when we start, the collision is on, the coins are visible, these boxes are unchecked. When I collide with it, I want to set hidden, so I'm going to check that box, and I'm going to set the collision off. So I'm going to set hidden and set the collision off. So now if I play this, they should disappear. The same thing should happen. Nothing should be different than what happened before. They're still gone, but it's just less destructive because I'm going to bring them back now. So in the coin, set actor enable collision. Let's set a delay next. how long for these coins to respawn? 2 seconds. We're going to set a delay. And I'm just going to duplicate the set hidden in game and set the actor collision because I'm going to do the same thing. But in this case, I'm going to not set it hidden anymore. So uncheck that box. And also turn the collision back on. So check that box. So now they should respawn. Do, do, do. And it continues counting up. Very impressive, I know. You're welcome. Bonus points. Cool. So right now, we're just seeing this little printout of the debug print string in the top left. I want to show you guys a way to actually print text to the screen using widgets in Unreal. And that will pretty much be it for our time with blueprints. So widget blueprints in Unreal are UI objects that can be used to paint graphics to your screen. You can put images on the screen, you can put text on the screen, you can put health bars and buttons and sliders that are interactive on the screen. If you're making a game and it has a start menu, that's created with a widget blueprint. If you have a game and it has a health bar, that is a widget blueprint. So in this case now, instead of having the little blue debug text in the top left, I'm going to print the number of coins to the screen in a little bit richer text sort of way. All right. So let's do that. I'm going to create another blueprint. So I'm going to right click in my content browser, or you could click the green add plus button, same thing. I guess this is one way to do this. There is an easier way. I should just show you the easier way. If you add and then you go to user interface and then you go to widget blueprint, add user interface widget blueprint, we want to create a user widget. Select. I'm going to call this widget blueprint WBP underscore coins, I suppose. Sure. Widget blueprint. And if you double click on this, you get a brand new menu in Unreal. This is the designer for widgets in Unreal. So in this main window here, I'm going to create the visual look of what it is that I get printed to screen. Over on the left, I have a palette of different assets that I can put into here. And I also have a outliner sort of hierarchy view of what is currently in my UI. And then over on the right, just like everything in Unreal, we have the details of those elements. This is a very, very, very shallow look at using widgets in Unreal. It's just showing you how to put something on the screen. Obviously, you can spend a ton of time really fleshing out a beautiful UI in here that not only prints stuff to the screen, but also has animation. You know, the text flies in, the text grows in size, the text shakes. You know, every time you shoot an enemy, the text shakes or something like that. You can do those sorts of things using this designer. In my case, I'm literally just putting the words coins on the screen and then having the number of coins change. It's very basic. Not even going to change the color of the text. Okay, so first thing I need to do here is add a canvas panel. Shows me my screen. In this case, a 16:9 screen. And then I want to add text to it. So I'm going to use an organizational tool here called, where is that? A horizontal box. Oh, right there. Horizontal box. Horizontal box is just allows you to create a row of things that are sort of like a spreadsheet that are all organized on a line. So horizontal box, and I'm going to put text into that box. So I'm going to go up and get text. And I'm going to drag that into my horizontal box down here. So it's parented to the horizontal box. You can see the text on the screen that I have here now. Default says text block. I'm going to go over to my font options on the right, and I'm going to scale it up so you can actually see it on the TV. Well, not that big. And I'm going to change the text here and just have it say coins. Very exciting.
Wow.
Yeah. We click back on the horizontal box and have it sized to the content. And so I'm going to have text that gets printed to the screen that says coins, and I'm going to have dynamic text that gets printed to the screen that gets updated. This text is fixed right now. It's always going to say coins. It's not taking input from anything, right? It's just a fixed text.
Did you parent the coin onto
The horizontal box. You don't have to use the horizontal box. I just like to use it because I'm going to have two texts, right? I'm going to have coins, and then I'm going to have the number of coins that gets updated. And I want them to be aligned, right? So I'm putting them in a horizontal box. The horizontal box is just an organizational tool. There's also vertical boxes that allow you to stack things. So I'm going to get more text. I'm going to also add this to the horizontal box. So now I have two things, right? And as you can see here, it says coins, and then text block is the default text. Then I'm going to put in there. What did I make the size of the coins? 88. Let's match that size here. 88. I'll just change this to a pound sign. Maybe give it a little bit of padding, just like to indent it a little bit so it's not sitting right on top of the number. Sure, maybe 30. Sure, that looks good. Beautiful. So this number sign is also just fixed text right now, but I want to turn this into a dynamic value that is taking input from that variable that we created before called coins. Okay. So to do that, I need to click on it so I can see the details. And then I need to go over here. See this little drop down here that says bind. I'm going to click that little drop down, and it's going to say create binding. It's going to create code for that text or for that object. Create binding. And that text takes me to another tab here called to get text. And I need to put a little bit of code in. This code is going to say get the value of the variable coins, essentially. So in order to get that variable, just like we did before, we need to cast to the third person character, because that's where our variable is. So cast to third person character. And then I'm going to drag out from the third person character a little blue dot here. And I'm going to type in coins. I guess it's not called coins, it's called coin. I'm going to get coin. Get coin. And then I'm going to convert that value into text, which this is a node that is not obvious what the name is. Well, I guess it kind of is. It's called toText. It's changing, in this case, well, in our case, an integer value to text. Otherwise you could change float values to text as well. So the node is called toText, the integer one. And this is going to plug in the return value on toText is going to plug into the return node return value. And that's pretty much it. Now it's just going to pump that variable for coins and change the current pound symbol or number symbol to the value of the variable coins. Another thing about widget blueprints, there is a designer where you design things, and then there is the graph where you do the code. So the designer is make the UI, the visuals of the UI, and the graph is the code. All right, let's compile this. Whoops. Oh, I did the same problem. Didn't tell it what is the third person character, or what is controlling the third person character. You also probably wouldn't know this off the top of your head. Get player character, in our case. Which player character? Well, this is a one-person game, so 0 is the first person. The default for the first person. All right, if I click play, nothing happens. Why does nothing happen? I created that beautiful layout. Look at this, beautiful. But I'm not seeing it when I collect the coins. Why? It's a really dumb answer. It's not dumb. It is the answer, but it's a simple thing.
Did you call it?
Because it didn't call. I didn't tell Unreal to put that on the screen, right? Question? Yeah, I created it and I told it to use the value of the variable, but I never told Unreal to put it on the darn screen, which is important, you know. When does the menu screen pop up when you're playing the game? When the person hits the escape button, when they hit the B button on the controller, whatever. You need to have some sort of an event happen to call that widget that appears on the screen. Makes sense, right? So to do that, I'm going to go back to our friend, the level blueprint. And when do I want it to appear? I'm gonna have it happen on. I'm gonna delete that, and I'm gonna use event begin play. I'm gonna have it right when the game starts. So when the game starts, create level, create widget. Yeah, create widget is what it's called. Create widget. Which blueprint? Well, I only have one. So which blueprint? I called it WP Coins is the name of the widget that we've been making. And what do I want you to do? So it created it, but it didn't do anything with it yet. I want you to add to screen, which is what the node is called, add to player screen. So create widget, add to player screen. When does this happen? When we begin play. You can also layer widgets with zdepth. Stack them too. Oops, compile. Target. Oh man, I always forget to do this. Owning player is get player character. Or get player controller in this case. No, that's not right. Target must have a target add player to screen. That's right. Oh, that was dumb. It wasn't that. It was this that is the problem. Probably should look where the big red error is. Just connect the return value to the target. What are we putting on the screen? This widget. That's what the blue line is. The target for the thing that we're putting on the screen is this widget. Remember, the circle and the colored lines are values. The white lines are basically triggers. Do this, then do this, then do this. The circle, the dots, or the colored dots, they are the events that get done, whatever that event is. Compile. You know, the compiling is useful because it's going to tell you what's wrong down here if you did something wrong. All right, let's play. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Great, right? So now for my last act, we're just going to create a condition. We're just going to collect some coins, and then, I don't know, when we get to 6 coins, we're just going to say, have another widget that says win on the screen. You know, have like triumphant music play or something like that. So I'm going to create another widget, another user widget. Just going to call this WPP underscore win. This is the same exact thing that we did for the coins one. Double click to open it up. Get a canvas panel to see where I'm designing at. Throw in some text. Scale this text up. This is a really dumb example, but it shows you that it works, that you could do different things. Let's align this more in the middle. Cool, good enough. You know what? We'll even change the color. Win. So this doesn't really need any codes because it's just a dumb graphic that gets painted to the screen. It's not taking any data from anywhere. And then I go back to, I don't want to go to my third person map, or I don't want to go to my level blueprint. I want to go back to the actual blueprint for the coins, because that's where I'm tracking the variable for coins. So let me drag this back a little bit. Here's where we have the code for overlapping the coins box. And I want to, I'm going to create another widget, just like we did before. That widget is going to be called, or it is called WPP underscore win, right? It's just what I called it. We are going to add that to the screen. Connect the return value. Okay, but what condition makes this happen? What state makes this happen? Well, here I have code that is incrementing the variable for coins every time I hit one. That's good. That's exactly what I want to do. But now, you know, let's just set the threshold at 6. When you have 6 coins, paint the win to the screen. Okay? So I'm going to drag off from the variable coins. I guess just use a greater than equal sign. Right? Is it greater equal than, not 0, but is it greater or equal than, I should put this at 200 and you can just watch me run back and forth for a while. 6. Is this greater than, or is coins greater than or equal to 6? If that is true, well, first, how do we define if that's true or false? We need to use this node called a branch node. Branches are one of the core nodes that you will use when you use blueprints. It's called a branch. So a branch will give you a true or false. It will output a true or false value or event based on some sort of condition. What is the condition in this case? Are we greater than or equal to 6 for coins? Is coins greater than or equal to 6? If that happens, if that is true, then create the widget for win and paint it to the screen. Okay, but I don't have anything triggering branch right now. So what I need to do is I need to drag off from here and connect it to branch. But when I do, it deletes the connection from here to here. So I briefly mentioned this before. What we can use when we have when we need to create like a power strip where we have one input going in and then outputting multiple events, I can use this thing called sequence. It's a node called sequence, not sequencer, sequence. And then I can add pins on here and have a bunch of them, but I only need 2 in this case. Then I can use that as kind of a splitter or a fork in the road to connect up the 2 different codes. So when I overlap the box, we're going to go and get the variable coins from the third person character. That's going to go and run into this fork in the road, which then triggers, it sets the coins to, it increments the variable coins by 1, prints that to screen, plays the sound effect, sets the coin hidden in game, disables the collision, then delays for 2 seconds, and then unhides it and gives it back its collision. Simultaneously, the code is going and looking and checking if the variable coins is greater than or equal to 6. If that condition is met, if that's true, then go ahead and create the widget for win, and then also paint that to the player's screen. All right, fingers crossed. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah! Never. I just keep winning every 2 seconds. You could add more code on there. That disables the incrementing of the variable now, or disables the sound effect at least, if you wanted to. But incredibly basic game or interactive installation in Unreal. So for those of you that are interested in creating live interactive performances for your final project, on some level you will be using Blueprint code. I guess unless it's just a dance, which is fine. But if it's interactive in any way, you will be using Blueprint code on some level. So I just wanted to show you some, kind of run the gamut on a lot of different things. Creating Blueprint classes, using the level blueprint, creating variables, using Blueprint widgets to paint objects to the screen, printing dynamic information to the screen, lots of different things like that. Let me show you, 1 second. I just thought about this. I'm going to go and get myself in trouble here. I have to go dig up this graphic real quick. Bear with me for 1 moment. Just thought about this. So I want to show you an example of a project that I worked on that I created a big on-screen UI for, just so you can see. Not that it was kind of complicated, but it wasn't very pretty. It just served a purpose of triggering a lot of different effects in our world that we made. Let's see if I can find it to show. Bear with me, I'm remote desktoping into my other computer. That's not it. Okay. Huh. That's a bum out. I can't find it. Maybe I'll find it during break and show you. That's what I get for trying to be fancy and show you stuff. Nope, can't find it. Any questions about blueprints? Just high-level questions? I know that was not a very deep dive, but it's more just kind of an introduction to show you that this is how you do events in Unreal, interactive events. Cool. All right. Let's switch gears. You know what? Actually, because we're just gonna go into talking about the final project. Why don't we just take a break early, and we'll come back and do it all at once rather than splitting it in half. Okay. So let's come back in 20 minutes, and we'll start talking about the final project. And I'll try to find that graphic. All right. 20 minutes.
Brandon?
Yeah.
Have you connected with a controller before? Using blueprints and Unreal?
I haven't used the MIDI. I anytime I've done that, I change it to OSC.
You changed it to OSC?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
I don't know. I'm just more comfortable with it. Like I had the blueprints already set up and stuff. It's been a while though since I've done
Wow.
any of it. Yeah.
But you're still just like controlling stuff with the controller, right?
Yeah, it's just taking input from a button or a knob or something. It's just numbers, right? At the end of the day. I think I've never. I know Unreal can bring in MIDI values, but I've never worked with that directly.
I wonder if this is even sending. I wonder if this is OSC. I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like so in the dark. Like I hit up actually one of the kids from Laser Days. He has the same controller as me.
Yeah.
And he sent me like 2 snippets of his blueprint.
Yeah.
But like to be honest, like it's not doing a lot.
It's not doing anything. Have you looked at if you looked at this page?
Yeah, that's also, I'm also reading that right now. Yeah, I mean, I still need to like print my device info, which I'm having issues with.
Yeah, I think first things first is you just need to get communication,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the device ID, and there's just like one node I can't find.
Hmm.
It's like it has like the array symbol on it in Git. I don't know. Let's keep this around a bit.
Yeah, it's always tricky to set up. And then after it works, it's fine. Where is this graphic?
And can I build it within like an After blueprint? Or
What?
If I'm like building like my MIDI controller blueprint, and I can just like make an After, and then drag that.
Are the things that you want to control going to be in the in the class blueprint?
No.
Then it might be easier to just put it in the level blueprint.
I was doing the level blueprint that time.
Yeah. Because otherwise you're going to have to make references. You're going to have to. Otherwise, I think it's just going to be more convoluted.
Interesting. So if I wanted to like streamline it where I can drag and drop it within any project I make in Unreal,
Huh?
would I then like, would I just be, like, what would be the optimal way for that? Like, would I create like a,
Since it's in the level blueprint and it's not an asset.
a player controller blueprint?
Possibly. I've never used a player controller as a device like that before. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into it. That's not clear to me.
Well, maybe I'll build it in the level then.
I think just get it working first, then you
Yeah.
can clean it up.
That makes sense.
Does that come up in Windows as a game controller?
As a
Like a joystick device or something?
I mean, it's always worked with like other stuff. I think it'd be fine. I'm honestly still trying to print my device maybe,
Oh.
and like get through that. Yeah.
If you go in Windows and you in Start button and you type game and you go to set up USB game controllers, does anything pop up in there?
Are you talking like Xbox Game Bar?
No, set up USB game controller. It's just like a little window like this.
Yeah, okay, I pulled this up.
Is there anything in there?
No.
Oh no. Does it need drivers to talk to Windows?
Well, you know, like Verilog?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what,
It works in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, totally. That's like what I primarily use it for.
Recording. Like I was saying at the very beginning of class, we're kind of heading downhill now in terms of things. I wanted to start to talk about the final project today because really going forward, the only projects to do involve the final project. The week-to-week projects that we've done, the avatar creation, the midterm that we just presented, the virtual worlds, the inspirational projects, all those week-to-week projects, we're done with those. Now the only projects that are really left is proposing your final project as a presentation in front of the class in 2 weeks, and then presenting your final at the end of the semester, which we have quite a bit of time to work on, a little over a month, which is what I usually try to get everybody. In between there, we're going to have studio time, where there's also a number of other topics that I'm going to cover, but they are less mission critical topics. They're more nice to haves or good to knows. Otherwise, the class is going to transition more into presentations and show and tell and workshop time. Okay? All of that is reflected in the syllabus now. So like today, I want to talk about the final project, what's involved with that, and as well as talk about making treatments and making proposals for projects, not just for this class, but larger outside in the world. And hopefully we'll have enough time for a little bit of maybe group speed dating to try to find some partners and some friends to make fun projects with. Next week, we're going to continue the conversation about developing projects, talk about previs, boarding out your projects, using Unreal Engine to block out your projects, using simple primitive shapes. And then also, I want to show you how to do facial motion capture using iPhones next week. And then the week after that, you'll present your final project ideas. And at that point, you essentially have a month left to work on the project. And then the following week will be all about cleaning up motion capture data, any kind of loose ends that we haven't covered. And then we'll have workshops, another workshop. We'll split the class in two and have half the class be 1 week workshopping, half the class be the other week workshopping in the studio downstairs. And then we'll present our projects, and that will pretty much be it. So we're heading downhill now. Any questions before I get into it here? I'm sure I will answer most of your questions. All right, no questions. So the next class that is very important to you is in 2 weeks, 14th of April. Okay. On that class, we will present what we want our projects to be. I'm hoping things go smoothly is that this date right here this shouldn't be the first day that you start working on your final project. You should start working on it today on some level, right? I'm not expecting you to do that today, but you are expected to start to formulate ideas and to form a group and those preliminary things. But you have 2 weeks to distill all of those ideas into a presentation that you will present in 2 weeks on the 14th. But I recommend, once you have your group and your idea and stuff, get to work. You don't need to wait for this. This date is kind of a formality. And all the times that I've taught classes, this is usually the structure that I do: presentations before proposals before final project presentations. I think I've only rejected, out of the hundreds of students, I've only rejected like 2 because they just sucked. And so it's more of a formality. Like, don't wait for my thumbs up, because you're almost certainly guaranteed to get the thumbs up to move ahead with the project. Don't wait that long. Don't waste time. Get started today. So what are we going to go forward with today? I'm going to talk about expectations of the final project, as well as show you some inspirational things. Maybe get the brain moving a little bit. Think about some things. Assuming how quickly this goes, how many questions y'all have, I want to get in to show you examples of treatments. It's kind of the format that I'm expecting for your presentations in 2 weeks about what it is that you want to do. Your pitch, your treatment, your project proposal, your deck, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it treatments, usually. And then hopefully we'll have time for a little bit of project development at the end of class. Maybe we'll go around the room and see what's percolating in the old noggin. Let's see. Nothing's percolating. It's just flatlined right now. All right. So let's check out some inspirational projects. I really love this video. If I could find my cursor. Really love this video. She goes into like motion capture boot camp. Has anybody seen this? And she goes into like motion capture boot camp, and this is like directed to be different characters. It's like, oh, motion capture is so difficult. I thought it was so easy, but it's fun.
Class. She'll go into creating hero poses, and then she'll get to tackle the monster.
Open House of Moose. This is the next step. We could have gone to a dance studio, but working in this environment will teach you a lot more about it.
Superhero exercise. You would think I should be well versed in this by now after doing a whole series on superheroes, but for some reason, doing it for motion capture was a bit of a different story.
Here's the exercise. Near a landing.
And then we'll go back. All right, so the details of the project. What do you need to do? Well, the most important date coming up is, that's actually a slide from last semester. So it's the 14th, 2 weeks from today. You need to have a group by then, hopefully a group as soon as possible, so that you can start talking about stuff. And your group is going to come up here and tell everybody else what the heck it is that you want to do for your final. Probably like 15, 20 minutes each group. Show us and tell us what it is that you want to do. Maybe you have some inspiration. Maybe you have some sketches, some storyboards at that point. Maybe you blocked it out in Unreal. Maybe you've done some motion capture tests at that point. Who knows? But at that time, on the 14th, you will officially begin the final project. Like I said earlier, today's the go button. Today's the day to go. So, after today, you can start working on your final project. But officially, this is. I just hope you don't wait that long. So what do you have to do? Well, you're going to make something with motion capture using the Unreal Engine. It's going to incorporate world building. It's going to incorporate avatars, obviously. Obviously, it's going to incorporate motion capture. What that is creatively, what that story is, and whether it takes the form of a film, a live performance, something else that I haven't thought of, I'm pretty open to all of those things. Actually, I wouldn't say pretty open. I am open to all of those things. If you're thinking about an idea that is a little bit random, not random, but different than a film, maybe just talk to me about it as soon as possible, just to see if there's anything obvious that I think of that could help you. I highly, highly doubt that I'm going to tell you that your idea is unachievable, let alone a bad idea. So, don't be worried about that. I'm here to help facilitate your projects. Some projects are going to be more difficult than others. We are going to talk about facial motion capture next week. But, if you want to dive in and do something like that skeleton Day of the Dead virtual reality thing, I'm not going to stop you from doing that. But it also incorporates a lot of things that we haven't talked about in here, So a lot of that will fall onto your own group if you want to go down one of those tangent roads. But I am here on support otherwise to help. And I will do my best. Obviously I can steer you in the right direction, but I can't teach you something brand new in this short of a period of time, especially if you're the only group doing it. But I will try to help as much as I can. So using custom motion capture, we're not using Mixamo animation for our main animations in this. Okay, please don't use that. I know most Mixamo animations. I know the twerk one really well. Don't use that. That's kind of the point of this class, is to record custom motion capture. If you want to use it on like secondary characters in the background, or you have like a crowd or something, I guess that's fine. But still the meat of your project should be custom motion capture that you are recording. That's kind of the point and benefit of this class, is that you get access to those facilities, which, you should really be excited about having access to those facilities, because that didn't exist here in this building a year ago. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Access to Motion Capture Studio, how does that work?
Got to go down and talk to the people at the little desk, and you'll see what's available. Has everybody at this point gotten their safety training? See, one thumbs up, a nod, a second thumbs up. It doesn't work, or you haven't tried? Oh, wow. Maybe we should make a door opening field trip. You could go down there and check at any point if you can get in. But also you need to book time in the space anyway. Yeah, question? I will say personally, my card didn't work at all last semester, even though it was supposed to. They're, oh yeah, we put you in the system. Now, I didn't need the space really, but I couldn't get into it. So it might just be, you might just have to ask and bug somebody if it hasn't been entered in the system. I think they smoothed out a lot of the kinks now. And last semester was the first semester that the space was open. I wasn't using the motion capture stuff, but we were using the studio for green screen and stuff like that a little bit. The space was very raw last semester. The green screen, I had them buy a big, long green screen, and we didn't actually get it until, I think, like week 13 hung up. So it was very rough last semester. But this semester, everything's pretty much set up. But yeah, if you haven't done your safety training, you should go and do that so that you can record outside of class, because you shouldn't have to wait on class recording sessions at this point. I shouldn't have to hold you back. And also, that's just how you're going to get more familiar with motive and the motion capture stuff in general, without me babysitting. So developing a custom motion capture project using Unreal Engine. It can take on whatever form you want it to, whether that's a film like everybody did for the midterm, which was all fabulous. I'm not just saying that. I really was quite proud with what you guys all showed. So, again, kudos, pat on the back for all of you. We only went down there a couple times and really only talked about the nuts and bolts of the motion capture stuff for like 3 weeks. And you pulled it off. Won't say it. I was a little worried, but exceeded expectations. Fantastic. So keep doing what you're doing. As far as the groups go, same thing as last time. Less than or equal to 3, unless you have a good reason for more people than that. I'm open to the idea of a 4th person. Just talk to me about it. I find that groups larger than 3, historically, there ends up being some third wheels, 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th wheels, sometimes 2nd wheels. And I just don't want anybody to not be pulling their weight. These are group grades, so I'm not grading you individually. It's a group grade, right? So it would suck if I did the whole project and my freeloaders got the same grade as me, So I'm pretty good at picking up on those things and like being aware, but also just talk to me about it. I'm available on Discord whenever. Hit me up, let me know what's going on in the future down the line as we're starting to work on these things. But yeah, if you have a good reason for a 4th person, then we can talk about it. But everybody else, less than 3. Can I work by myself? Yes. I would prefer if you didn't, because that's not really how the world works. And I think it's really valuable to work in a team, especially if you want to work in this space in the future. You're always going to be working with multiple people, so you just should. But if you really don't want to, then I'm not going to force you to. Just talk to me about it. As far as like the structuring of the groups, I like to think of this as a real production. So in a real production, you would have motion capture performers. There's a lot of crossover between these roles. I don't mean that if you're the performer for the motion capture and you go and perform, I don't think you just wrap it up after the end of the shoot day and you're done with the project, right? Like there's a lot of cross-pollination and crossover with these roles, but I think you should think about delegating tasks to your group members with these sort of things in mind. Obviously, there'll be double dipping probably, but just have point people, assign people that are performers. Do the performer have to be in your group? No. You could bring in outside people. Like I said before, we had dancers in previous classes. They were very much in demand for a lot of the groups. They were the performers for a couple different groups and not just their own. So, if there's anybody that's willing to, if you really need some good sword fighters, we got some right here. Not to call you guys out, put you on the spot, but we've seen it happen. But just think about taking on different roles, because this is kind of how it is on a real production. Who's going to be leading, who's the point person that makes the decision on the direction on set, who's driving motive and, cutting the camera and saying to do this and saying to do that. Obviously, it's a group effort. I don't mean there should be one militant director that is the boss of everything, but you should give yourself roles. Who's the Unreal person? Who's going to be driving, the world creation? If there's compositing involved, do you have these skills in your group? If think about that while you're shopping for groups too. Like, not that I think it will be a problem, because it didn't really seem to be a problem for our previous project, but if you make a group of people that are all Mac users who don't know how to use the Open Lab, you might be in trouble with actually making an Unreal world, So think about that. There's some value in knowing the people in class that have the badass PCs with the sweet GPUs. It's me. Those are the attractive people in the class. The more LEDs on on the keyboard, that's how you know. So just look around. He's got look, this guy's bringing extra knobs and stuff. What a nerd.
Put me on the spot right here.
I'm sorry.
Boy.
I'm putting myself on the spot. I'm just freestyling.
Yeah. I made it on the spot, though.
Man, turn your LEDs off. You're flexing a little too hard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Show off. So think about the roles. So we're developing a custom motion capture project in some capacity. In 2 weeks, you're going to present a formal treatment of that project. What form does that presentation take? Google Slides is what 99% of what people do. We could do a live demo if you really want to. It's a little disruptive to go downstairs, but if you want to, we can do it. Yeah, I don't know what other form it would take. Maybe you could do claymation or something. I don't know. A big giant flip book of what you're going to do. Yeah, you're making a presentation. And use storyboards and previs in your presentation. The more you can show us visually what it is you want to do, like treat it as like a commercial gig. This is what we want to do. This is what we are going to do. And this is how we intend to do it. And this is what everybody's doing. And, this is how everybody's pulling their weight. Yeah, so treatment. Next week, we're going to talk more about boarding and previs. And yeah, that's really your assignment, is to just form a group and start going. I'll do a check-in next week just to make sure everybody has a group. But honestly, you should have a group before Tuesday, I would say. Because that's really the biggest impediment, even before coming up with an idea. And as far as it comes to your presentation, formal pitches, I guess this was probably like the biggest struggle for most groups, was coming up with a title for their project and a name for their team. So most importantly, name your team. I don't want to have to put your individual names as your team name. Come up with a name for your team and a title for your project. And come up with roles for everybody. This is stuff that should formally go in the presentation. A clear description. You're going to tell us about it. Show us inspiration, references. Show us sketches, images, previs, storyboards, animatics, visual stuff to explain your project. And also come with questions for the class. Like, what are questions that we could help with? Not just me. I'm just one person, but we have 18 of us here. How can what information would be beneficial for you to learn from the class? Like, oh, I've never used XYZ in Unreal before. Has anybody else used that? Tell me about it. I'm going to talk to you after class. Like, what questions about your project do you have for others that they could help with? Or if you have creative questions, should we do this? Or would it be cooler if we do this? And you want to put that out there to the class, maybe there's things you don't want to put out there to the class. But if there are, leave time for that. And also leave time just for questions generally. I'll have questions, obviously, but it's best when your classmates are involved as well. So next class, next week, we'll be talking about previs and using that in Unreal, and then also building a pipeline for facial capture. Quick show of hands, who has a newish iPhone in the last 3, 4, 5 years? Half the class, okay, so that's plenty. I do not. I will be using, if you have an iPad, that works too. If you want to bring that in, you probably always are going to bring in your phone. But if you don't have that and you have an iPad, maybe bring your iPad in and we can do that as well. Kind of do like a live workshop, try to get it up and working too for everybody, if we can. For those of you that have computers that are able to and stuff as well. Although, to be honest, it's always really difficult to do because NYU's network is so locked down, the Wi-Fi. So that sort of networking stuff is tough. What I usually do is I just hardwire it, or I bring in my own router and create my own Wi-Fi network to do this. I'll have to rethink about what I'm going to do. So we'll see how live the demo is. At least the workshop is. I'll do it live, but we'll see about the workshopping. Any questions about this so far? We'll look at that later. No. Yeah, we can watch this now.
Why use Unreal?
This video comes at the angle from screenwriters. Screenwriters usually just putting pen to paper and writing down a screenplay for film, right? Sometimes using tools like storyboards to help get their ideas across and try to pitch their screenplay to get made. But this video is about screenwriters using Unreal to make their films, or at least make the previs for their films.
From a writer's perspective, it helps answer the question, what if? We can basically go from mind's eye to camera's eye instantaneously.
The great thing about Unreal is it brings your characters to life in a way that the script just could never do. But also you're creating something that exists, and not just for this movie, but for all time.
Filmmaking is an art form that has evolved with technology, and technology enables creative freedom. Working in Unreal Engine didn't just give me a tool, but it also gave me confidence in myself. As a screenwriter, I was admittedly intimidated by using Unreal Engine to start with. It's been used by visual effects experts. Where does a writer fit into this? Unreal Engine was originally developed as video game software, a game engine to build games. But what you're also able to do with Unreal Engine is build the cutscenes. And what you're essentially looking at before you place the cameras is your entire scene, your entire set with your characters, almost like you're looking down at a theater. But then you get to start placing your cameras and building out the set, putting in the characters, lighting it, and then playing around with the cinematography and the pacing, the editing of the shot sequence. And suddenly this video game becomes a very powerful tool for filmmakers.
My writing process prior to Unreal Engine was a pretty isolated experience. You kind of sit by yourself, you come up with your ideas, eventually you work with the director. Maybe at some point in the pre-production process you get an opportunity to visualize what you've been seeing in your head. What's happened now is that the timeline is real time now. You can write the best thing in the world, but until you see it visually, that's the only time you're going to really know it's going to work.
I'm obsessed with world building, and I've worked on a lot of projects where I've had to create a whole universe and all the rules of that universe. What you're constantly trying to do is sort of go talk to one person and express your ideas. Then you go talk to another person, trying to get them on the same page. There's previs, there's shooting, and then there's visual effects. This is kind of like combining them all.
With screenwriting, all you're doing is words on a page. It's not even visual. But what I'm doing in Unreal Engine, late into the night as I'm playing around, working on a scene, and suddenly you're folding in elements like production design, like locations. You might be using robots as your stand-ins for actors, but you can animate them and get a sense of movement and performance. And suddenly what was in your head or what was just words on a page is becoming a visual storytelling medium.
Working on Unreal is like having a TV studio that's always ready to go at a moment's notice. Our script just calls for alien world. That's what it says in the script. But then when you see it, you're like, what if we had a temple there? What if we had a temple ruin? And what does that look like? And then we start to think,